All right.
Welcome back to Balance Patch New England Premier Challenge. I am Sam Pletcher,
I am
alongside the illustrious,
Jake Major.
and welcome to round three. We got today Matthew G against Ethan McFetridge, and we are getting right into it. Let's take a look at Matthew's team. I see some offense.
Yeah. So Matthew running a team of Incineroar, Chien Pao, an Urshifu Rapid Strike, Rillaboom, Fluttermane, and Tornadus Incarnate for me, versus a Raging Bolt, a Farigiraf, a Tornadus, Landorus Incarnate form, Urshifu, and that is Urshifu Rapid Strike, and the Rillaboom. So some interesting notes just beyond the team composition is some things to note is that this Chien Pao on Matthew's side is running Haze instead of an additional Dark move or a fighting move, instead opting for the Ice Spinner, Sucker Punch, Haze, and Protect, possibly not wanting to fight Dondozo, but this is not the matchup for that one.
Yeah, and Hayes really did pick up when the Dondozo started to pick up. It's kind of one of those things where as one rises, the other rises to counter it, and then it falls. So interesting to see it here, maybe kind of as a precursor into what we expect to be a lot of anti-Dondozo techs. I could also see Hayes possibly having some use into other stat stacking strategies, such as Iron Defense Body Press, or an Archaludon that's maybe been using a bunch of electro shots and had a bunch of stamina boosts, but none of that's going to come out here from Ethan's team.
Yeah, so Ethan also running a bit of an interesting set, notably on this Raging Bull. We did see the Magnet, which, maybe doesn't want to take some additional damage while giving its own damage, but we actually see as its only Electrodog Thunderclap and Volt Switch, so no reliable way to do electric damage without switching. But pairing well with that Draco Meteor that it has, so it can use Draco Meteor and then Volt Switch a bit slower pivoting.
Yeah, and looks like here we've got the game underway. We have a couple Tornaduses looking at each other, and then an Incineroar versus Urshifu. Now that Incineroar is going to have the advantage turn one because of his Fake Out, but as soon as that Fake Out has been used, it doesn't want to be facing down an Urshifu. Now it looks like Ethan's going to switch out into the Raging Bolt to take that Fake Out, set up a Tailwind, and we'll see what the Tornadus on the other side goes for. It's going to be a Bleakwind Storm, so maybe to delay the onset of the Tailwind here, and since the Tornadus has a Mental Herb, it's going to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Staggering Tailwind is something that, at a very high level, is a very important skill to learn. There are times when you do have to max those Tailwinds if there's an immediate threat inside of your Tornadus. But Matthew realizing, hey, I don't really need to worry about that. Even if I get taunted, I do have that Mental Herb and we can play around with those speeds and find them out. Ethan actually missing the Bleakwind Storm into the Tornado. It's not going to matter. A Magnet boosted Volt Switch is going to be able to take that out. And Ethan now going to be able to bring in a brand spanking new Pokemon, as the Urshifu is going to be able to come back out. Not going to take any real damage from that Incineroar, maybe getting a knockoff, but no, going for a parting shot here. So Matthew going to be able to go out of Incineroar and probably bring it back in thanks to that knocked out Tornadus.
Yeah, Matthew kind of sacrificing his own Tornadus for that staggered Tailwind, and we will know whether or not that pays off in about 3 turns of time once that staggered Tailwind does come into play. Looks like Matthew's going to bring out the Fluttermane. We'll see if Incineroar comes back in to threaten Fake Out, and that is where it would really pay dividends towards Ethan if he's got that Farigiraf in the back.
Yeah, so normally I'd say, oh, that's a bit of a dicey thing to bring in versus a Scarf Urshifu. But with that Incineroar Fake Out pressure, it is going to be a bit different. But as you noted, Sam, that Farigiraf in back is pretty free to come in and say, no Fake Out for you. I'm ready to throw out my big old Surging Strikes into this Fluttermane.
Yeah, and that Terra Water is going to give it the extra oomph that it needs to really take out the Fluttermane. Incineroar does not care about the parting shot. The critical hits are going to ignore the drop. And here comes the Farigiraf, so we will see if the Fake Out is ignored here as the Terra animation pops for the Urshifu. It's going to get a big boost to its water type attacks, and that should be able to just clear out the Fluttermane.
Absolutely. Without that Mystic Water and without Terra, depending on how that Fluttermane's trained, could have probably survived it. But now with that Water Terra looking to be a bit cleaner, as we see a Terra on the Flutter Mane.
Oh, this could be big for Ethan here. If he gets this prediction right and the Incineroar throws off the fake out, even if he doesn't go to fake out, and he does, there is the Farigiraf's armor tail blocking it. That is exactly what Farigiraf is for. Here comes the Surging Strikes, and that Terra may just be for naught on that Flutter Mane. It's going to be a 2-hit Surging Strike knockout. There's 2 and 1 for the road.
So a bit of information for Ethan there, seeing that Flutter Mane actually only took 2 Surging Strikes before getting knocked out. Not even going to need the Terra next time.
No, it won't, and that's he was in position for my favorite interaction. I call it the good morning, good afternoon, and good night from the 3 the 3 Surging Strikes there. But now Ethan can just Surging Strikes the Incineroar, take it out, and then it's a Urshifu on a 3v1. And he's got a Raging Bolt in the back, so I like where he stands.
Yeah, Ethan playing this game really, really well, just recognizing exactly what Matthew needed and taking them out as they came in. Unfortunately, I don't see a way back into this for Matthew. Ethan playing a really, really terrific A+ game here.
Yeah, and funnily enough, that whole staggering Tailwind thing, Ethan can use that to his advantage with the Farigiraf on the field, because if it sets Trick Room during that staggered Tailwind, then all of a sudden, that Scarf Urshifu he's got, it's going to be underspeeding the Urshifu on the other side, and maybe a little bit of a kind of cheeky extra, stun on him bonus points for ending game 1 with some flair.
Yeah, and after that Citrus Berry recovery, I don't even think that Urshifu Surging Strike would be a 2-hit knockout, as we see the Psychic go into the Urshifu, looking like a pretty bulky Urshifu or a not very strong Farigiraf.
One of the two. I'd say that with the damage that the Surging Strike does to the Farigiraf, it seems the Farigiraf is more on the defensive side. Either way, that's good information for Ethan to have, that the Psychic is nowhere near a one-shot on the Urshifu, so he can kind of use that knowledge to his advantage. But yeah, there's a win for Ethan in game 1, and looks like it was marked as Ethan is now named one. Yeah. But we will see how Matthew responds. Matthew's team is very balanced. It's got that Fire, Water, Grass core where you can throw out fake outs and then abuse the protects that the fake outs cause with Urshifu's Unseen Fist ability. And then he's got a couple of ice types and fairy types to cover for the dragon types that might stall the Fire, Water, Grass core. So it's a very nice team composition. But part of the onus of having that balance is being able to have the right Pokemon on the field when you need them. Like a Flutter Mane that covers for a Dragon type, it's not going to be great if the Pokemon that you have on the field are the Rillaboom and the Incineroar. And so I think in that case, the decision to run Volt Switch on Ethan's Raging Bolt is really going to pay dividends, because it'll do the damage that it needs to do. But if Matthew switches into that Flutter Mane, well then all of a sudden the Raging Bolt's not going to be on the field anymore and you can't target it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looking at the team, I think Matthew is more into Flutter Mane damage. Because, we did see it get immediately knocked out, but Ethan actually has no resistance to Fairy on his team. The only Fairy resist being that Terra Landorus, and or the Terra Fire Rillaboom as well. Okay, there are a lot of Terra options actually looking at it.
But you can only use one of those per game.
Exactly. There are no raw switches to those fairy moves. So in the face of that Scarf Urshifu, I'm now going to switch out here in favor of the very, very good Intuit Rillaboom. But if Ethan clicked a U-turn here, going to do super effective damage and just get out of jail free. As we do see a Terra Water, probably just going to be clicking that Surging Strike back in.
Oh, actually, we're going to see a Terra on the Tornadus. So that's an interesting decision. I think, if I had to guess, Ethan is trying to avoid a super effective Icicle Crash from that Chien-Pao. There's no way for him to take out the Chien-Pao in one hit. It survives Surging Strikes and has a Focus Sash to eat a close combat. And so I think Ethan wanted to keep the Tornadus around for at least another turn. But, of course, that Chien-Pao switched out. And so now you have the U-turn coming in. That's a lot of damage. Wow. So this must be a very... Oh, it's a critical hit. I was about to say, either this is a really offensive Rillaboom or it's going to take a critical hit. But, now I don't know... I wonder if Ethan's going to wish he had that Terra back later in the game.
Yeah, I don't think Terra Steel was the right play there, personally. Yes, you would have been knocked out with an Ice Spinner, but if you're able to get up that Tailwind, Tornadus did its job. you know, maybe just saying, okay, my opponent doesn't have a fighting move on that Chien-Pao, so I'm pretty free to go for it here and resist whatever it wants to go for. But not having this later in the match for either some more offense or some better defense, because, you know, you were already resisting this grass type from Rillaboom. Yeah, you were going to take some damage from Bleak Windstorm, but it's not that big, and you have a whole Raging Bolt there that you saw one-shot it with Volt Switch of all things, not even Thunderbolt.
Yeah, you know, Raging Bolt once again sitting pretty here. It's got to be a little bit wary of the Rillaboom's high horsepower potentially, but given the natural bulk, it's not going to be in any threat of a one-shot. We'll see. Looks like Matthew will not take the bait this time. Farigiraf switches in to resist a possible fake out. High horsepower is going to miss, but it was targeted into the Farigiraf, interestingly. So Raging Bolt, nothing to worry about there. And now we see that it looks like the Volt Switch KO on the previous game, that was a damage roll. So a little bit more information for Ethan here, as now he can bring in this Urshifu and threaten another big U-turn on the Rillaboom.
Absolutely. And Ethan seeing this position really well, I'm not sure if I would have seen it immediately on the fly, knowing that that this Rillaboom can't even go for a Grass Glide because of the Farigiraf being on the field. Farigiraf, even though Tailwind's up, the max Tailwinds mean it's a pretty free option to go for a Quick Room and a U-turn. Readjust your position and be pretty well off. So Incineroar are going to be switching in for Rillaboom here.
And now we know all 4 of Matthew's Pokemon, and it's important to note that the Fluttermane is not on the field. And I think the Fluttermane, you know, like Jake said, that could have been really useful for that damage output, especially into something like a Raging Bolt. But now we just know it's not there. And so you've got a Fire type, a Grass type, and then 2 very offensively oriented Pokemon that aren't going to take much damage. So if you're Ethan, you gotta love that, like, the cards are on the table here. You know what kind of moves you can use and what's in the back to resist it. And now you don't have to worry about the Fluttermane as an offensive threat anymore.
So Ethan actually opting to just pick up that KO on Tornadus, meaning that his own Tornadus's Tailwind will be unopposed later in the game if he wants to maintain that. My one issue with what Ethan brought here, just at a glance, is that there's not a lot of offense. You have the Raging Bolt and you have the Urshifu, but if those are able to be mitigated somehow, you'd be in a bit of a tricky spot, being that you brought both of your speed control options, and neither one is the most offensively prominent Pokemon out there.
Yeah, I will say that I think Ethan's recognized that if he's going to win his game, it's going to be on the back of his Urshifu. The Urshifu is what's going to deal the most damage here, especially with the Rillaboom and how the Raging Bolt is threatened by the Chien-Pao. So he's done an excellent job of pivoting the Urshifu around, keeping it safe from grassy glides, keeping it in the back, and it looks like the Raging Bolt is trained to the point where it can eat that Ice Spinner from the Chien-Pao and launch a Draco Meteor. Unfortunately for him, though, it is going to miss.
Yeah.
And there's a Flare Blitz into the Tornadus, and that's going to prevent the Tailwind from coming back up. So now it looks like we're going to be on the same page as far as speed tiers are concerned. That said, you got to love how this Urshifu is positioned in the endgame.
Yeah, this game just took a pretty big turn. Urshifu able to come in here, though. Going to be able to outspeed anything that Matthew has thanks to that Choice Scarf, and probably threaten KOs on everything as well. The only tricky little thing here is what's Raging Bolt going to do? Is it 2 HP? It can protect here, which is probably its best move. And, you know, Matthew can't protect in the face of this Urshifu.
Nope. Now, though, you see that one of the issues with running Haze on Chien-Pao is that it really just cannot do much damage at all into the Urshifu. And it looks like this Surging Strike is going to come pretty close to picking it up, actually. But nothing that Matthew has on the field right now is really threatening this Urshifu. We'll see if the Incineroar goes for a parting shot or something to pivot out and bring the Rillaboom back on the floor. Oh, it's going for knockoff, but into the Raging Bolt, the double target backfires. I think Matthew was banking on the fact that if he took out if he was able to take out the Raging Bolt, then it would be automatically redirected into Urshifu. The knockoff could have been a really sneaky way to get rid of the Choice Scarf and let Chien-Pao outspeed it. But that said, I don't think it would have made much of a difference because Urshifu outspeeds the Rillaboom and Chien-Pao can't really touch it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ethan looking like he wants to reset what his Scarf move is. I believe the Rillaboom is still in back for Matthew. So gonna have to try to preserve that as the only thing that can beat Urshifu. And Ethan, knowing that, preserves his Urshifu, switches it out so it doesn't get too much damage this turn.
A Draco Meteor, is it going to miss again? It will. And now, if this knockoff, I was going to say, if that went into the Farigiraf, we could have had an interesting situation on our hands. Because then there would have been no way for Ethan to block the priority. And you have all these fake outs and grassy flies that can come out and threaten everything else on Ethan's team. As it stands, though, right now, we've got a Farigiraf and a Scarf Urshifu against the world. And Ethan's going to have to lock into a move for good here.
Absolutely, and if I'm Ethan, I'm looking to just like close combat at this point. Probably going to be a KO on just about everything from this point, from what I can tell. Sam, has Matthew used his Terra this game yet?
I don't think he has, and I think that could be a really key, that could be one con of locking into close combat. It looks like the Chien-Pao, oh, it's Terra Dark. Okay, wow, I stand corrected. I was worried that if the Chien-Pao was Terra Ghost, that could lead to a really interesting situation where if Ethan gets locked into the close combat, it could give an out to Matthew. But as things stand, it looks like close combat's a pretty safe move, even with a lack of defenses. It looks like we're going in for a U-turn. It's not going to kill the Rillaboom. And here comes a Wood Hammer. That's going to take out the Urshifu. The recoil is going to take back out the Rillaboom.
But it certainly would have been enough.
Yeah, and I think, it's always, you always got to watch out for the close combat defense drop. But I think this is one situation where it's really not going to matter. The Chien-Pao gets outsped. It can't target you with a Sucker Punch if you've got a Farigiraf on the field. And Incineroar's got Flare Blitz and Knockoff, both moves of which are resisted. And so even if you do take that defense drop from close combat, you're still going to have plenty of bulk with which to work. Urshifu was at full health, and I think it would have been curtains. But as it is, the U-turn just barely does not pick up the Rillaboom. Woodhammer takes it out in retaliation, and we've got ourselves a game 3.
Yeah, I think Ethan kind of falling to the pressure there and just kind of making a huge blunder there that, in a perfect world wouldn't have been made. Maybe thinking that the defense drops, as you mentioned, might have been more impactful, but as we recognize, Incineroar with a fire and a dark move wouldn't have been enough. Even if a knockoff went into that, you had Aqua Jet.
Yep. And that would have been able to take off the that would have been able to take out the Chien-Pao before you took an Ice Spinner at -1.
Exactly.
I
So
think, yeah.
maybe not knowing that close combat is stronger than a super effective U-turn. Very often we do want to say, okay, super effective move, just click it. But there are times when that's just not the case.
Yeah, and I think, Ethan, he played that game so well because he recognized that Urshifu was his damage dealer. It had a great matchup into Matthew's team, and his tendency to just protect the Urshifu at all costs, he just wasn't able to kind of shed that mentality when he needed the Urshifu to go out and just deal the final blow.
Absolutely. And I think Matthew needs to make an adjustment here. He just is in this game by Ethan making that big mistake at the end. Obviously playing to whatever else he had, and I commend him for that, but definitely needs to make an adjustment. And here we see the lead of Chien-Pao and Urshifu, and that Urshifu from Matthew is exactly what I wanted to see.
Yeah, and right now this Raging Bolt is in a really interesting position. We're going to see a speed interaction here that's really important. Does the Raging Bolt behind a Tailwind still outspeed the Chien-Pao? It does, and that's huge. That's a lot of damage from a Volt Switch, and if Ethan wasn't able to get that off, he's just looking at straight into an Ice Spinner. But as it is, Urshifu comes in an ironic twist from last game. Now he's ready to let the Urshifu use some of its defensive capabilities, take a little bit of damage, and I would say we'll see what this Urshifu goes for. Surging Strikes. I almost got surprised that it was a critical hit. But that's actually going to take out the Tornadus. So the Tornadus is not very defensively trained. So, now he'll be able to bring back the Raging Bolt. But we will see if Ethan can make the most of these 4 turns of Tailwind, because right now, that's all he's got.
Yeah, if I'm Matthew here, I'm a little bit afraid. I have a Raging Bolt staring me down. I have a Scarf Urshifu staring me down. I have a Tailwind I'm going up against. I am looking at getting knocked out, and I'm going to have to make some defensive switches.
Yep, and we'll see if Ethan can call them properly. Right now, it looks like he's going for the switch of Palooza. We've got a U-turn and a Volt switch coming out. I feel like I'm playing Gen 5 OU right now. Incineroar comes in. If that had been a Surging Strikes into the Incineroar slot, it would have been a really tough time. There's a Detect. That's going to stymie the Volt switch. So the Raging Bolt is going to stay on the field here. And I believe he had the Furgraph in the back, right? No, it's Rillaboom. And so that makes the priority coming out from Matthew's side a little bit more interesting. Obviously, Rillaboom can go for the Fake Out to knock out the, or to keep the Incineroar from doing the same. But then you're kind of wasting a turn of attack. We'll see if Matthew has anything to come in and take this Volt Switch. It's possible he just sacrifices the Chien-Pao. But, you know, every turn, the clock is ticking, and Ethan only has so much Tailwind left.
Yeah, Ethan here, because of Tailwind not really having to worry about speed interactions in terms of faking out a fake-out Pokemon. And that Volt Switch from Raging Bolt is probably going to do more than enough to take out this Urshifu. Actually going for the U-turn there, probably smartly expecting a Rillaboom switching, but we just see the Incineroar.
Yeah, and in comes for Matthew the Rillaboom, which is the exact thing that you want to take, this Volt Switch. And now Ethan's in trouble because he's got nothing that can stop a Fake Out. And so Matthew's got 2 Fake Out Pokemon still on the board, as well as an Urshifu that can hit through Protect. This is exactly what he envisioned when he put this team together. You've got 2 Fake Out users, an Urshifu that can hit through Protect, and a Chien-Pao that can increase the damage. And so now that Ethan's decision to leave Farigiraf on the bench for this game, looking really sketchy right now because there's no way to stop the Fake Outs that are going to come out. And that means that Matthew, if he positions things right, could be in for a really productive endgame.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, Ethan's decision to leave the Farigiraf at home being a little bit questionable. You know, we did see that it lacked the offense, as I pointed out last time, but the key thing that it was doing was sitting on the field, being an Armor Tail user, and not allowing Fake Outs, not allowing Grassy Glides. And now this Urshifu looking to be in a lot more of a precarious spot where a KO is very easily threatened, as we actually see the Terra Fire playing with Terra Fire in the face of a Water type, but probably expecting that U-turn back into
there's the Grassy Glide. The Urshifu survives, and you know, Rillaboom was in an interesting spot there. It could only do one thing. It could either Fake Out or it could Grassy Glide, right? And so if you know your Urshifu can take the Grassy Glide, then there's no, you don't get punished for, you know, attacking with it and trying to play around the Fake Out. So if Ethan made a more defensive play there, Matthew really could have capitalized on it, and the Rillaboom survives 2 U-turns. How about that? It's still on the field. We'll see what this Incineroar targets into. If it was going into the formerly Rillaboom slot, I don't think the Urshifu has enough health left to take Flare Blitz.
Yeah, and my apologies. I thought that Matthew's Rillaboom had Terra'd into Terra Fire, but it was not the case. It was Ethan's that Terra'd into the Terra Fire. With that Tailwind, not really an important Terra. I may have hung on to that. But more importantly, Urshifu going down here, and Ethan's queen, in this case, kind of like a chess queen, where it's capable of all that offense, going to be removed from the game.
Yeah, now we got a really interesting situation on our hands. Ethan's only got 2 Pokemon left, but they both have priority. For now, Rillaboom's priority on Grassy Glide is going to expire as soon as this grassy terrain wears off. And that means that the Rillaboom can no longer threaten the Urshifu with the Stab Grassy Glide. However, the Raging Bolt can. So we may find ourselves in an interesting position here where Ethan and Matthew are trying to play around these priority interactions and try to keep one Pokemon safe. Because the Chien-Pao threatens the Raging Bolt, but it won't be able to take it out unless it uses Ice Spinner, which leaves it vulnerable to Thunderclap. And Ethan making a really interesting decision here. Clicking Draco Meteor, that's going to lower the Raging Bolt's special attack and make it so that I don't think Thunderclap is going to have enough to KO out the Urshifu at the moment.
not only that, but with 2 knockouts on Ethan's side of the field, that Raging Bolt can be stuck with that -2 drop,
Exactly.
and maybe more for the rest of the match. And let's make it a -3 thanks to that parting shot.
Yeah, and we'll see. I think if my counter is correct, this might be the last turn of grassy terrain. And so Rillaboom's going to come out now, which is really smart, because the grassy surge won't reset the grassy terrain, which may set, or no, I guess it's got another turn left. So now the question is, who do you fake out? And if you're Urshifu, do you try to play around things by going for Aqua Jets? A lot of interesting priority interactions going to come our way, and we'll see who comes out on top of them. But I think that Raging Bolt losing all those special attack stages, I think that might be the difference in this endgame here.
Not only, yeah, I was going to say that Raging Bolt was pretty much Ethan's stalwart in this match, where it was going to throw out the most amount of damage. And because Matthew only has his Fire Water Grass left, did
Chien-Pao's still hanging on, but it's still in the red, so it doesn't have a lot of health remaining. This is an interesting situation. What I would have done if I was in Ethan's spot is I would have double targeted the Urshifu with priority and hoped to land a crit, because that's pretty much the only out. That said, if we get a double target into the Urshifu and it doesn't protect, okay, it does protect. I was going to say, for a second, it looked like there was a world in which the Urshifu might have exposed itself to go down. Now I believe the grassy terrain is going to expire, and that means it's curtains for this Rillaboom that no longer has a priority move and is now a fire type. So a Surging Strikes means it's not going to stick with us.
Yeah, Matthew actually making an impeccable play there, just double switching, getting that parting shot off, reducing Raging Bolt's damage, getting the Incineroar back in to reset that fake out, able to go for a fake out into the Raging Bolt this turn.
And that circumvents the possibility of a crit.
Gone. Urshifu just going to be able to...
Oh, wait a minute.
My goodness.
Oh, wow.
So
is Rillaboom faster than Urshifu?
It sure is. It's looking like a very, very bulky Urshifu, but thanks to that, it's able to survive the Wood Hammer outside of terrain, and it's able to pick up that KO on the Terra Fire. Rillaboom, once well-trained Terra Fire, is now Surging Strikes twice and gone. So Raging Bolt gonna have to do the rest of the heavy lifting on its big old neck. Probably gonna have to land a few critical hits with Draco Meteor, get some Thunderclap calls right against the Chien-Pao as well. And what looked like Ethan's set after game 1, Matthew making great adjustments here to bring it all the way back in his favor.
Yeah, it looks like Matthew at this point can just go for damage, and what drops to Thunderclap drops to Thunderclap. And Ethan doesn't even target into the Urshifu, so it's going to take a lot of damage from that close combat. There goes a knockoff, and now I think he's stuck, because an Aqua Jet from the Urshifu is going to pick it up, and that looks like to be the game. Ethan sees the writing on the wall, and he forfeits after what looked like a commanding 2-0 win. Matthew popping off a little bit. He's going to take it 2-1 and improve to 3-0.